So just another Fida Talks happening, and we've got Piet Paris. Hopefully that's a correct pronunciation. I'm not too sure. Is Piet correct?
No, it's Piet.
Piet, right, okay.
Yeah.
So like Piet in England, okay.
Yeah, Piet in Paris.
Piet in Paris, perfect.
Piet Paris, yeah.
And we're lucky to have you, and you've got your show on at the moment, which is in the background, which is fantastic. So we're quite lucky, and I know Annika's there as well, the gallerist, so she's hiding somewhere, which is fine. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen because I wanted to give a bit of context. There's the gallerist. There we go, behind the scenes. Let me just share my screen. Let me just put this up the top. There we go. Okay, so Piet Paris, when I looked at your work, it was kind of a combination of relationships, storytelling, beauty, and staying playful. And I think that's quite an important part of having longevity as a creative, is to have all these sort of pillars that makes up what you do as an artist and how you progress and how you stay sort of relevant and how you stay creative. And I think that's quite a hard task as a creative, to have moments of being in fashion and then out of fashion and then having briefs that you don't appreciate and then having exhibitions. And so you have to be quite malleable as a creative and sort of change. And when we were talking in the background before we managed to get you, is someone was saying about your work being quite timeless, which is quite a nice comment. So that was a really great statement from somebody, which I really liked. And so I got a picture I found online, and then there's a sort of a little biography about your work and your process and how, you know, being an illustrator and a sort of designer, I would say a graphic artist as well, of these graphic shapes, working as lecturers, masterclass, exhibitions, and this sort of whole breadth of collaborating with sort of luxury brands, Victor and Rolf, Prada, doing live workshops. You know, there's a whole sort of amalgamation of sort of your process and how you work and how I guess your journey has sort of grown over time. And I really love this photograph. And the reason I picked this photograph is because when you think about artists and illustrators over time, they tend to have really iconic photographs that really encapsulates them at that time. And maybe in 150 years time, when you have a big retrospective, this is the sort of photograph that I could imagine seeing huge of your work. So, and when you go to see Picasso shows and all this, they have these huge photographs. And I thought this was quite a really perfect photograph for me when I was looking through the different images of your sort of practice. I guess part of your journey as an illustrator, and you can explain, is the editorial side of your work, working for magazines. So as an illustrator, as an image maker, how has your editorial experience been over your practice?
Well, it's how it started my career, doing editorials. So, well, first I'm going to say hello to all the listeners. Hello, can you see me?
Hello.
Hello. Sorry for the late entry, but I was on Google Meeting instead of Zoom meeting. So
You're worth waiting for.
Thank you. No, it's nice that you all are there, still are already all there. And I regard it as a compliment that you start the visual presentation with an illustration of Mats Gustafsson. Is that correct? Because he's one of my heroes, of course. Besides René Gruot, Mats Gustafsson is one of the best fashion illustrators ever. But anyway, that's not the question. Your question is my work for magazines. Well, as you all know, I in the business for more than since 1988, so that's quite a long time. And at that time, there was no internet. So the main market for me was getting into the magazines. And well, I did quite a long career doing magazines. I worked 8 years for Japan Vogue. And well, there's a lot of stories about doing editorials. So I worked for Harper's Bazaar and W Korea, and then it was all about advertorials. So then I had to draw a certain product because the brand paid for the page in a magazine. So it was always quite on deadline, because if money is involved, everything is a little bit stressed. So there's some highlights in doing editorials, and well, the one you see on the screen on the left is the Why Don't You for Harper's Bazaar, Netherlands. And well, it's about the lipsticks, the colors of the lipstick. It's a new range of colors for lipstick. And then I made up bags that go along with the color of the lipstick. So it's a little bit fun and a little bit dynamic, because fashion is always on the move. That's why she is walking.
Well, would you have had the choice of because it has that sort of Mondrian-esque color palette? Would you have them choices of the still movement, or I'm just trying to think of, like, because it has that sort of rifting off modern art as well from color, the yellow, and the primary colors as well. Was that something you made that decision, or was that a decision between you and the art director?
Well, in this case, the colors are based on the color of the lipstick, of course. But you're totally right that my color scheme, my color card is quite Dutch, quite Mondrian, quite modernist, strong, bold colors. And that's also because I work a little bit old school and a little bit naive, almost like a young child. And I wanted just, if you work on a computer, that you have such a range of colors to choose from. And I still don't work on a computer. I do everything by hand. It's all about cutting in paper and work with colors that you buy in a tube or in a spray can. So,
and do you find that sort of limitation actually helps? Because sometimes it's nice to have limitations like reduction and reducing, and then you think, well, I won't destroy it with all of these extra gimmicky ways of adding color. Here's the color palette, the tools are my basic tools that I have, and it keeps that sort of freshness. And that's why we maybe mention the timelessness, because it's that sort of using traditional methods, even though it's just cleaned up and put in a contemporary way. It still has that sort, because, you know, people might say, oh, well, is that done in Illustrator or is it vectorized? And you can see the sort of splats on the bottom, like the cutout piece of paper. That adds its sort, I guess, appreciation of understanding. Whoever your viewer is, has to decode it and deconstruct it to really get the value from it. Because their initial thoughts might be saying, okay, I really like this image and it sort of works, but then there's like historical context to it. We're talking about Mondrian, and then there's the process, the traditional methods of collage, which is quite interesting as well, and the way that you sort of you put it together, and this sort of playfulness. which I think is great. You haven't adopted to technology methods to just make it easier, which you could have. Have you tried and failed?
Yes, I tried it, and I don't like it. I worked on the computer, tried to do Photoshop and Illustrator. I really like to work on a tablet. I really like working on a tablet, on an iPad. But and I'm doing that for fun. I don't do it for jobs, for actual jobs, because people hire me for the way that I'm, well, what I did previously. And I like the limitation of doing everything by hand, because it's very limited. And I like the drive and the energy that you need to get your message across if you work with the limitation. And I trained myself to work with limited elements in my work.
Yeah.
And it keeps me fresh, because of, if you limit yourself, you have to the choices you make, they have to be very strong and very new. And I try to keep my work fresh within the limitation. And it's funny enough that with every illustration that I do by hand, I can still invent within the limitation something new. People from clients, they won't notice, but I need something new in every illustration that I do that I never did before. And that keeps my work energetic, fresh. And in the end, I hope that it has a kind of iconic feel to it.
Yeah.
Also happens very quick when you use black and white. It's a little bit timeless color scheme. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, no.
Because it was a big question, so I tried to put everything in.
Yeah, and were you commissioned? So what, with regards to your background, were you commissioned quite early on in your career, or did it take quite a while? Like, what was your early journey?
Well, I started off I did it step by step. But the first step was a good one. The week that I got my diploma, how do you say, when I left art school, I went to Milan, and at that time there was a famous magazine called Vanity from Anna Piaggi, and I waited three months on a bench outside the office to get in, to show my work. And then I got a job for Vanity with the famous art director Alberto Nodolini. And then I came back to the Netherlands, and it was in a newspaper. People thought it was kind of an achievement. So the first step, and then the second step is I was hired as an illustrator for a newspaper. At that time, newspapers were big. I was hired by a newspaper that was the biggest one in the Netherlands. And the fashion editor, she took me along all the fashion shows. Yeah, can you believe it? Really, can you believe it? I went to all the fashion shows all around the world for 15 years, to haute couture, to the women's, to the menswear, in Paris and Milan, and sometimes in New York, and once in Tokyo, and once in London. So there I was as a young and still gorgeous looking together with the fashion editor, I was there in the audience at every catwalk show. And I learned myself to train, to draw everything that was on the catwalk. So very quick sketches in a notebook, and the newspaper, they ran those illustrations in the newspaper as a report. So major step. And because I was in the same audience as all the other fashion editors from Belgium, from Germany, from England, and from the Netherlands, people get to know me, and they thought, oh, that's
He's
nice.
good.
He is doing illustrations. Oh, let's ask if Piet can do also illustrations for my magazine. And oh, so that's basically how my career took off. And I got an agent that helped a lot, and got another agent, and that helped a lot. And I did a big job in New York, and that helped a lot. So there are some key moments, because my career is quite long. There are some key moments that really, made it happen. And talking about relevant, now I'm quite long in the business and turning 60. Oh, I am 60. And then it's a big question, Patrick, how to deal with staying relevant.
Yeah. It's the hardest question.
It is. It's a bit the topic of the moment. But well, I recently did a beautiful job again for Victor and Rolf. I did a job for Cartier. I did a job for a beautiful hair brand in Paris that I'm working on now. My heart gets warm when I feel that there's still a need for illustration in the first place, because I'm in an illustration gallery now, and Anneke is, as we love fashion and we love illustration, so that's really warm. How do you say in English? Warm-hearted.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing it for the money, of course, it's nice that sometimes you get big money for the job, but it's nice that you still feel relevant. And because I invested so much in my career, and so last month were good ones.
Good. That's what we like to hear. And then I guess, I was looking at some of the other images here, which I felt was more narrative based. It had like a little twist and a little bit of a story, which could feel a little bit editorial, but has a graphic attention to maybe your advertorial side, which is a good training ground for doing advertising. This sort of switch from editorial, advertorial to advertising. And I think, when I looked at these work, they kind of play with both areas. They could be used in editorial, they could be used advertorial and advertising. And I think that's what I saw quite nicely. And I think it's quite appealing to, the commissions that you're getting now. How do you feel about fashion illustration now with your long career?
I'm happy to see that there are a lot of young people taking on the job. So how do I think on fashion illustration now?
Or is that too difficult?
No, well, the competition is huge at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's so many great illustrators around now worldwide, and it's because you have the option to see everybody, because I love to do Instagram, and then there's so beautiful work going on outside. There's so much out there, and I love just so beautiful. Well, there's always, of course, that I think it's a little bit underrated, doing illustration, and I wish big brands would use it even more than they're doing now. It's still a little bit, yeah, you have to work, you have to fight for your niche. It's still a bit of a niche, but well, I'm not the one. I'm not so into negative talks and complaining.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would do this for this long, and I'm very proud that I'm still doing it, and I'm well anyway. So
Yeah.
I love the work of Laura Lane, and there's so many beautiful fashion illustrators out there.
Yeah. No, I think there is, but it's interesting you mentioned Laura Lane, because I spoke to her and she's been doing glass sculptures. I don't know if you've seen her glass, which are fascinating. Like fascinating to see someone go from this sort of graphite drawing to these 3D, almost dreamlike, surrealistic glass sculptures.
Yeah.
So she's amazing to see someone who's jumped from one area to another.
Yeah.
And it is hard to, I guess, like lots of people, you hear them saying, well, I pushed illustration to my furthest point, but I'd like to, as creatives, we want to either take on ceramics, or we want to, we do many printmaking. There's many strings to our bow, as we say.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Laura Lane had kind of done, is she kind of said, I took it to this level.
Yeah.
And she dips in and dips out. That's what I kind of see from what she's doing. So,
Yeah.
but I agree. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, and we have speakers like you, is to really celebrate not only fashion illustration as a practice, but people to understand it is a hard practice, and it should be appreciated a bit. I don't want to say, like you were saying, we don't want to complain, but it should be celebrated. And I think that's the goal. And I know Annika's doing the same. So we're all like flying the flags, as we would say, which is good. Then I saw this great sort of experience that you did, and your head fits quite nicely on my page on top of yours, but this Prada project. And I thought, so explain this project, because this is a great one.
Well, it's what happens a lot doing illustration. They book you to do an event. Mostly it's in the store. I did it for Cartier. I painted on Christmas balls for hanging in the Christmas tree. And this one in particular was a nice one because, well, it's Prada there, but so I did it in the shops in Amsterdam, and I did it in Düsseldorf, and well, it can happen to anybody. I just an email popped in asking if I would do an event in the shop for 2 days, and of course I wanted to do that, and it was on the spot. Paper cutting on the spot. So it was all in to uplift.
It's stressful.
It was.
Stressful. Yeah.
It was. Is that who was that?
That's
you,
Patricia.
Stephanie?
Patricia from Ireland.
Oh, hello, Patricia. There's no picture. There's only says
Oh,
Patricia
sorry.
iPad. That's okay. Hi, Patricia. From Ireland. Yeah, it was stressful, but you have to behave like you're not stressed.
Yeah.
You're there as well.
Yeah, fake it to make it.
Yeah. So I was totally flushed and I was warm, whatever. But anyway, it was fun to do because, well, I like doing paper cutting, and then if you bought a bag, you can come over to me and you could point out one of the examples that was on the counter, and then on the spot, I did the paper cutting and even gluing. And so I had to do, and
Wow.
people couldn't wait very long. So it was kind
Yeah, fast.
of fast. Yeah. So.
So if they bought a bag, they would get a free collage from you?
Yeah,
Or,
Yeah.
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 wow.
Yeah.
Did
That
you
was
sign
pressure.
it? Did you sign it?
Yes, I signed it, and
Wow.
yeah. And
So it was a luxury experience for them, really, that you were working
people
live.
really appreciate it because
Yeah.
people doing something by hand, that's not very common at this moment and moment in time. So it was quite special, and it was fun to do. And I was wearing Prada. I get an outfit in the morning, and
Wow, that because I guess everybody has a secret. Does anyone in fashion has a secret love for Prada?
kind of, yeah. Yeah.
If you appreciate good fashion.
Yeah, I once met her, and she's very lovely as well. And no,
Wow.
it's a little bit hard, big money, of course, and very commercial in the end. But it's nice that they appreciate a small job that I did. They really loved it, and
It looks wonderful. It looks wonderful. They're completely collectibles now.
I don't know, but I did my best. Yeah, and
No, they're great. They're great, and I think it would be nice for Prada to do a clothing series related to these. I could imagine it.
well, there was the beautiful collection that Jeanne de la Tante, I don't know if I pronounce it very well, the beautiful illustrator, she made faces, and they were printed on dresses.
Oh,
Kind of
yes.
5 or 10 years ago, I don't know, I don't recall. And that was really one of the highlights as for fashion illustration in general, that a fashion illustrator was invited to make a print that made a major statement in the collection. So that was big at that time, yeah.
Yeah, and I think because Raf Simons uses lots of imagery, illustrators, painters on his work, so it's kind of quite a nice match, because I remember them using lots of painters and illustrators within their prints, and Prada makes these bold, and Miu Miu as well, they make these bold statements, and I think that's what illustrators really appreciate, that they make bold moves, and it's a little bit like us. We try to be subliminal, but make bold moves.
Yeah.
And I think and Prada was a perfect match for you. So it was really nice. And it was nice that they allowed you to be sort of yourself. Because sometimes at these live shows, like I see lots of people having to draw loads of people, which I think here they enabled you just to have fun, which is why I pointed out the sort of playfulness of the work, which is kind of liberating, just to say, be you and do what you want.
Yeah, you're correct. And I love doing kindergarten jobs.
I've got you perfectly wrapped up then. And then I guess the next part of you, so you've got sort of editorial, advertising, and then exhibitions, which, you know, you're sitting in now. And there's this beautiful exhibition on the left. And then I'll just move you down on my screen. And then you had the Victor and Rolf space as well. So
yes.
It was nice to see these two. So explain a little bit, I guess, the exhibition side of your work. Being a creative, you just felt it was right to then start selling your work in exhibitions, or were you asked, or like the journey? I know most artists want to exhibit.
All right. Well, the one on the left that shows 3 major big illustrations. If I refer to that one,
yeah,
that was an invitation, because I feel very special, because during my lifetime, my work is already kept in a professional archive by a museum. So
Wow.
it was
Good
a
for you.
government decision that I was on a short list of designers or artists or people in the industry that they want to archive already during my lifetime, because it happens in the past that archives of artists got lost when they die. So the government of the Netherlands came to the conclusion that they have to be more active in achieving the archive of still living and working artists. And I was on the short list in the end. And the exhibition on the left, the black room with my illustrations on the table, it was a celebration and a press moment to announce that from that moment on, all the work that was in the exhibition was going into the archive.
Wow.
Fantastic.
And is it just them selected pieces, or do they want more?
They have everything from childhood pictures, invoices,
That's fantastic.
contracts, sketches. They love all the sketches that I do. I save them now. So there were boxes and boxes of sketches, of originals. My financial administration is there as well. And every 5 years from now on, I can bring new work to the archive, and they're going to digitize
Digitize it.
make it digital.
Yep.
And they're going to put it on the website so students can can go online and look at the
Ik kan
archive.
IC daar nou zo dom van en box in box niet in je Apple Music bibliotheek vinden. Je kunt me vragen om een radiostation af te spelen of naar je muziek vragen op een andere app.
I don't know what that was.
I don't know either.
That was the translation. this
Probably.
Piet, we could put this in the archive as well then.
Yeah. So my work is being archived, and it's very strange because if I go there, I feel like I'm already not there, that I'm dead. But
wow.
but it's really an honor, and
Really, yeah.
so doing exhibitions as I'm doing now at the Gallery of Anneke is always fun because I like to have feedback. I like to have talks about the industry. I like to have talks about fashion. And if I'm doing jobs, I am on my own at my atelier, and then I'm focused. And sometimes to go out and do exhibitions, nice ones, about fashion is nice because then you meet, you get around and meet people and interesting.
And the other image we have there was the Victor and Rolf.
Yeah, that felt also very special because when I entered the hall, because it's the fashion show Victor and Rolf in the Tuileries in Paris. It's a big tent, and there I came in and I felt like Michelangelo entering the 16th chapel. Because it was so big, I made it in scale. I made it A3 format. The originals are archived now, and the originals are A3 format. So there I was entering the tent, and there was big images of my work as a backdrop and on the catwalk. And Victor and Rolf are very supportive in my talent, and they quite important. And I taught them, I was a teacher for them, but I can't remember. They always have to laugh when I say that, because I'm a teacher on the side sometimes. And I at some point I was teaching them, but I can't remember.
Oh, well, I guess they must have been well behaved.
Yeah, they're very well behaved. Yeah.
Usually you remember the bad ones.
That's true. That's true.
You never forget them.
No.
Also, so I guess the last slide that I have here is the exhibition that's on now. I thought I'd do a little screenshot of the gallery because
that's nice.
it's nice to see the stepping stone process of where you've gone. And I guess the bikes I can now see is playing a relevant role. In the UK, it's more e-scooters now than bikes. I don't know if the e-scooters are big there.
No.
Thank God.
No, we keep on driving the old-fashioned bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And we
Good.
wear them out, and they're totally broke. And it's if you do an e-bike in Amsterdam, you're on the wrong side of the page.
In the UK, it's all e-scooters. We're becoming too lazy.
Yeah,
At least you're
London
staying-
is a little bit bigger, then you need a faster transportation.
Yeah.
You
So
want
I
to-
guess
You
I
want to-
guess the exhibition, yeah, Annika might be hiding around there somewhere, and we can see the illustrations just behind you. So we were just showing here. There's Annika as well, the gallerist. No, we were saying, and I guess yeah, you could take us a little look. We get a live wander.
Well, it's hand made, so paper cutting
Beautiful.
with a scalpel, with a surgery knife.
Wow. And they're not very messy. You're super clinical.
I am. I try to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, because they almost look computerized.
Yeah. And it's funny because people think that I do things on a computer, and I don't know what. I don't pretend to do it on computer. It's just I like sharp, clean, René Gruot. I like shapes. And so doing clean cut shapes, of course you can do them with vectors and on Illustrator, but it's so different in how to get there. I don't know if the same energy will be in it when you do it digital. I've never gone that far to reach the same. I never went there completely, but and well.
I wouldn't suggest you do it because it might make you depressed.
All right. Okay.
So because I went to do a talk with Michael Craig Martin, and if you see his work, he still uses tape, which he did in the very beginning. He hasn't changed his process, and everyone still thinks is that created on a computer, similar to Julian Opie, all handmade. And I think people are shocked, but that gives them the longevity. And I think it's hand touch.
And you know, Patrick, in the beginning, I had to defend myself for doing illustration because people always said, well, why do you do illustrations? You can make a picture of the dress. So at that time, I had to defend myself against photography, and now questions come up. Well, why don't you do the job on the computer? And well, no, I don't want to defend. I don't have. Do I have to? How do you say in English?
Justify.
Justify. Thank you. Why do I have to justify for not?
Yeah.
Why for it?
I think they could have said the same thing to Matisse. Why do you use scissors and cut out? I think it's the action of the immediacy of being able to do it and the process. It's about process. And I think that's the bit that people forget is that the relationship between you, the cutting, and the end result. And it enables you to shift things around real time rather than rely on a computer, which is giving you a sort of an ideation of the reality where you're there going, I moved that shape. You're thinking about composition live. And I think that's quite, it's a beautiful process to be able to collage live with real paper and it gives you the sense of being alive.
It does.
And I'm trying to imagine, from me doing collage and being playful and doing stuff with my kids, because I have my sketchbook here. And my kids are making me snowflakes,
I love those.
and and I'm giving them no instructions.
Yeah.
It's for an exhibition I'm trying to plan, but it's this idea about making snowflakes. It's the snowflake generation making snowflakes. And they don't know why. I tend to use my kids quite a lot in my work now.
It's good.
And it keeps it quite playful and fun, and they feel like exhibitions. So I get them to draw my work, and then I might put their work in the show. So people are like, what's happened there? And I go, oh, well, this is the exhibition. So then no one's ever too sure. So it's almost having a play with the viewer and having that experience of like, and with your work being a combination of playful, naive, sometimes like the Prada work could feel quite naive to people that want hyper realistic, but for us who appreciate good graphics and good design, understand the process. And I read quite a lot online about who are the eyes that we're trying to get to appreciate our work. And we have to have a moment, which I guess you have had, which is, I don't care anymore. And you must have had that. I had it probably during my master's at 35, where I just said, that's it, enough.
Is that a question, Patrick? Or
it's a combination of a question and a statement, but I guess there must have been a point, because you said you had to justify yourself about photography, and then you have to justify yourself about Illustrator, and it's like, look, you either like it or you don't. End topic. And
I mean, do you want me or do you not want me? I'm a package. This is what I do. Do you love the work I do? Employ me. If you don't love the work I do, bye-bye.
Yeah. Well, I can't recall a certain moment that I thought, well, no, just recently there was a pitch for doing illustration, and then the illustration pitch we didn't get it. And at that point I was a little bit, I thought, I was a little bit fed up that you had to pitch to get illustration in, but that doesn't happen that much. And maybe I'm a little bit in a comfortable position that I don't need to justify my work all the time. I just keep on doing the job in such a way that I have the most fun for myself doing it. And either for doing an image on Instagram, if I don't have fun in doing it, I'm not doing it, because otherwise it has no reason. So I try to do a commercial job as much fun as possible for myself. Otherwise I won't reach a level, and otherwise it's difficult to stay in business. If you don't love what you're doing, then better don't start with it, because you won't keep up. And that's probably the most difficult thing, to stay relevant and to keep enjoying yourself, because it has a lot of difficulties, of course.
I also, just looking at your work in front of me, have you thought about sculptural work?
No. No.
Would you?
I just Lieselot Watkins went also for ceramics, and of course I can do 3D, and of course I can do make a statue in the same vocabulary as doing flat illustration, of course, but people are making animations with my work. So sometimes they move, and that's lovely to see, because you can do great stuff with the graphic shapes in my illustrations. They can move, and so, but going for another field in expressing myself, no, I don't feel it. And
may I ask a question, a very basic question?
yes,
if you don't mind.
of course.
How did you discover your voice in collage? When did you discover it? How did you discover it? You know, from sketching to collage. May I ask how that transpired?
Yeah, of course, it's a good question, and that happened because that I will explain, because when I started out doing illustration, a lot of my illustrations I didn't like, so I started cutting out the best bits in my illustrations. So imagine an illustration that went wrong.
Yep.
And it happened a lot, and I was a little bit tired about it. And then I started cutting out the best pieces, because I thought, well, if I cut out the best pieces from the, if I cut out my mistake, the good ones, and leave out the mistake, well, you get it?
Yeah.
You can bring it into the next illustration.
Great.
So basically, that's how I started doing collage. But at the same time, you're cutting out in paper, you get a stencil. You get a hole in your paper. And I started using those stencils for to reuse it for the next illustration.
Yeah.
So at that, I did a lot of stenciling in my time. And but if you do stenciling, there can also happen a lot of mistakes. The paint can go under the stencil.
Yeah.
Can happen a lot of accidents when you're doing that. So when I'm doing a deadline job now, it's safe to stay within paper cutting, because then you can direct, and it's the less
it's less prone to accidents.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's safer in some ways.
Safer.
Yeah. So that kind of explains why your signature style evolved, you know, like eliminating mistakes, using stencils, reusing stencils. Therefore, your voice becomes that stronger, you know, it's like developing a song, you know, you've got this rhythm going through your work then because of the practicality of reusing stencils. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. You're totally welcome. And it's just try to, I made I made this from my weakest point, I made my strongest
your strength.
point,
Yeah.
my strength. And,
Brilliant. Brilliant.
I also, when I left art school, I had to do a fashion collection. I had to make a clothing collection.
Right.
And I'm a very bad after this on the sewing machine. I can't put sleeves in, always the wrong way around. So I left the art school with a collection of dresses with no sleeves, strapless.
Design statement.
Yes, because then I'm again, then I'm going around the problem and not tackling. So that's,
it's a good.
I always use that as to explain my way of being, that that you can make a strong feature out of something that you can't deal with, and that's a little bit.
You can tell by your work that you understand the cut of clothing. You know, you do understand the making of the shapes.
Yeah, I know. I
I
know
know
how to do
sleeves are a
patterns.
nightmare, but I can see it in your work now that you say it, that you actually understand the cut of a collar, the shape of a belt sleeve, etc.
Well, that's a big compliment, because really I try to get that in the illustration, that I have a knowledge of cut and construction and
See it
tailoring.
big
And
time.
that's what I use when I'm teaching, the knowledge on how a jacket is constructed. I want them to see that there's more to a jacket than on the eye, that it, well, anyway, that's I love talking about how clothes fashion is made, and the construction and the fabrics as well. Of course, my work is very, very flat, but well, I know how to draw a pattern on folding, and how to draw drape, and how I wish I could do it. I wish I was an illustrator that has a kind of super real feeling but well, it's not my cup of tea.
No,
but I love seeing it, and I love to see at the museum all the old paintings in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, all the old 17th century paintings, and the lace and
the fabrics, the rendering of the velvet, and the rendering of the shine on the silk. Make you totally jealous.
But I'm not doing it, no.
But I can see, even in the piece behind you with the bicycle with the yellow wheels, the construction of the collar is completely visible because of the colors you've used and the shapes you've used. That's why I'm saying I can see that you understand the making of a jacket, you know.
And I like the work of Victor and Rolf in the way that they really are trying to make a difference in showing shapes.
Yes.
So they're doing shapes
and exaggerating.
Exaggerating, and
good.
Because,
good.
Okay.
Brilliant. I'm just aware of your time, and I know you mentioned that you've got some meetings and so on, but we're so blessed to finally get you after our slight glitch, but that wasn't a problem. I think we survived it, and we got you. So I think thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have a great show, and hopefully it all went well. And we're blessed to have spoken to you. And now I didn't know you were being archived, a live archivist. So that that was an interesting fact. And hopefully, because I spoke to Annika, hopefully in the new year we might be doing something together. So hopefully we'll meet in person and have a nice cup of tea.
It would be great.
Ride on a bike. Thank you, Piet. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the invite and for being there, you all.
Thanks very much for sharing.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.